Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Boys in Motion podcast. We're your hosts, Brian, Tyler, and Andrew, bringing you the latest tips and tricks to help you level up your game in endurance sports. In this episode, we're going to be diving into building up your training plan and structuring your year for sport success.
Announcement: we're hosting BIM 5K coming up October 5th. That's right. Anybody who wants to join in, let's do it. Join the BIM 5K. We're doing October 5th. Location to be determined, but it will be in the Niagara region. Correct?
That is correct.
Perfect. And this episode's perfect for this because we're talking about training plans. So, works great. We're going to start our training plans at this time, and we're going to get a nice BIM 5K in. So what are we going to start with?
Yeah, I'm really excited for this episode today because I'm building a training plan specifically for the BIM 5K, and I think there's a bunch of other runners out there, people who are kind of doing couch to 5K, and also people who are quite fast, who are all training towards the BIM 5K. So we're going to break down everything you need to know about building a training plan. We're going to cover the importance of having a structured plan, the different types that are available, how to create one and tailor one to your goals and needs. We're also going to dive into various types of workouts that you should see in any good training plan and how to be flexible when it comes to a training plan. So not only can you continue to progress, but you can still have a life outside of sport. So Andrew, over to you.
Yeah, let's get started. And let's start talking about how we can start structuring our year and how we can build in blocks into our year to achieve our goals, whatever those might be for you. So as I mentioned, many of the training plans are structured in a way that there's different blocks within your main portions of training. So throughout the year, you may have, for example, me specifically, I generally train for two marathons. So I go on that normal marathon training cycle, one in the fall, one in the spring. So I will have about 12 to 18 weeks where it's more structured training. And then there will be off season where there's base building and then other pieces. So dive into that a little bit and what kind of those pieces can look like for your training plan, whether it's for a marathon, shorter distances, or more things like triathlon as well, because it applies kind of regardless of what you're training for in an endurance.
Yeah, any sport, I guess. Well, Andrew, question for you. When you start your block, let's say it's 18 weeks, 16 weeks, it all depends on, when you want to start and what your fitness level's at. But are you just like starting at the bottom and just ramping up the whole way? Or do you have like little bing, bang, boom? What do you do in the middle?
Right, so this is definitely a do as I say, not as I do. But ideally, you're not starting at the bottom. You are, after a peak event, you will kind of ramp down a little bit, take some time for yourself, mental break, physical break, but then you kind of slowly build back up to that next block where I would say it's mostly just that aerobic zone two training, whether that's running your specific event or something else that you want to be doing. And then as you are kind of going into your block, generally the one main thing that I like to do is that long run on that first week of your training block. A week or two before it begins, I want to be comfortable running that distance in a long run just at zone two. And that should not feel like big exerted effort, because if it does, you might be in trouble once you get into that block.
And I think that's great advice. Like myself personally, having a structured plan allowed me to progress very quickly in the sport of running, also cycling, whereas I had just been running more casually without a goal in mind. So I think the first step of actually becoming somebody who has a structured plan is setting a target. So either a certain event that you want to compete in, a certain sport that you want to start participating in, or a certain goal that you want to achieve in said event as well. So it can be really one of those three things. And when I approached running, I really started with a very long base building because I didn't need to kind of progress from couch to 5K, which is a lot of the beginner plans, is to kind of get you to the point where you can comfortably run a 5K or even couch to 10K, for example. But I was somebody who was already comfortable having a long run be a half marathon. So I needed something a little bit more aggressive. But one tip that Andrew gave me that really saved me when I started training for my first marathon was to make sure your base is to have a concerted effort in building your base so that when you do start your training plan, you're not biting off more than you can chew, because that brings you a risk of injury. Because with any training plan, really the point is, yes, you're having something structured, but you're generally also pushing your limit a little bit. But you don't want to over push, overstrain yourself, and then injure yourself. So it's really about designing a training plan that fits your goals, but isn't too ambitious either. But having something defined as that end state, which is that event or that fitness target, is, I think, step one in finding your right training plan.
Or multiple events. I kind of like doing that, but that's a sidebar. Another thing I was going to say is that setting that goal, but also within your plan, following the rest days or the down weeks, or else you could easily get in the train of, oh, I got to just keep going harder, keep getting faster. But really you could mess yourself up for later on, and you'll really tire yourself out and have risk of injury too.
And when you're going to build these training plans, what do you guys do as far as going and identifying what the races you want to target, kind of the goals you have? Like what is that like day zero, right? Actually, maybe minus a month, minus 2 months kind of look like? I was like, what do you look for as far as the event and kind of how do you plan that out?
Yeah, so I think, like you already mentioned, you need to think about this over the long term. You need to think of this as a year, not just a 3 month period or a 1 month window. You're not going to change your fitness that much in that short a time. So you need to look for a goal that carries you out a minimum of 4 months so that you have time for your body to actually adjust into that training plan, because you want that plan to be long enough and you want it to be sustainable. So I think when it comes to setting goals, like you said, identify those races or those milestones that you want to hit and make sure that they're achievable and timely. I think following that SMART goal is something that is a smart thing to do when it comes to setting the goals for your training plan. After that, it's really like splitting up your year, so understanding what the full year will look like in context of those goals that you have, and making sure again that you have goals that happen every 3 to 6 months maybe, but then also thinking of that long-term vision. Like you say, you need to think in the grand scale of things.
And like another easy thing too that I always start with is like, hey, let's pick a month that I know that I don't have any other personal commitments. Let's say, like, you go on a family trip or you're out of the country for a week. Like, you're not going to schedule a race within that month, or else you could that messes with your goal. So you kind of pick a goal, like a goal a month or few weeks where you know that you're available, you could get some consistent training in, and you actually know that, personal life does get in the way, but nothing major like a wedding or a big trip or something like that.
Yeah, I think that piece on balancing the personal life and, we're all doing this as a hobby. So balancing that with other things that are going on and being aware of that as you're picking events and building up these blocks is super important. I know for me personally, summer is often a hard time just with so many things going on. Your weekends get eaten away. Getting in those long runs can be super daunting and you just feel drained. So I love winter blocks when everyone's hibernating. I can just get out and run. It's cold, but it's pretty mild winters here as far as snow. It might not be the case in Ottawa, but in Toronto it is the case. We barely actually get snow on the ground, which is pretty nice. And the cool temperatures, I just love it. So yeah.
Premium heart rate. It's nice.
Oh yeah.
I'm the opposite. The weekends get eaten up by bike rides and long runs, baby. That's all there is to do in the summer. What do you mean?
No, you're totally right. And either way, I think once you've identified, the period that you want your block to be in, and then that end goal, whether it's a key event or a key milestone, then there's this importance around what does a training plan actually look like. So before the training plan begins, and you've touched on this, it's the base. So this is what you're doing before the structured training comes into play. This should be a lot of low intensity kind of zone 2 building. You should be comfortable at the mileage so that you don't overexert yourself by jumping into that plan. You actually want to be even with those first few weeks in terms of volume or hours on your feet or on the bike or across the triple sport of triathlon. And then after that, you're going to end up having this build period where, of course, it ebbs and flows, but there is that upward trajectory as you grow into your training plan. And then you'll hit what you call your peak week. And your peak week generally is about maybe a month or so away from the target date of your plan, at which point you will begin to taper off. So that means decreasing the volume, decreasing some of that intensity, and then generally within the 3 to 1 week, 3 to 2 weeks before that goal date that your plan is focused on, you will begin to really taper off where that intensity drops. And that's meant to really recuperate, rejuvenate your muscles, your fitness, and really absorb all of that great training that you built throughout that build phase. And then you have your day. Hopefully it's a successful one based on all the training that you did. And then you'll have some recovery time after that training block. It's generally you don't want to just hop right back in and build again. Although sometimes that's just how the schedule goes, and that can be a great thing. I know, Ty, with your triathlons and marathons and all of these events, you end up kind of always being in a build if you're not competing.
I love the build, baby. There's no off season really at that point. It's just how hard do you want to build in for what sport? I mean, for what race? So it keeps things interesting, that's for sure. But maybe, like you're saying, not the ultimate best way to optimize your performance, but it's sure a fun way, that's for sure. And hey, I don't know, it's getting some good results lately, so we'll see.
That's it. Andrew, do you feel like you've done, I think, a ton of concerted, very focused training blocks on a single sport? What do your periods of training plans look like?
Generally, I stick to 12 to 18 week blocks, and those will be generally I will do a April to May marathon and then an October to November marathon. So it'll be those weeks leading up, and that will generally depend on uh, how busy. Go winter one depends how busy Christmas time is, and then the fall marathon will depend on how busy the beginning of my summer is. So that is really why I kind of shift the amount of weeks. But generally, it will be, yeah, that first block of each of these marathon blocks will be a base building where it's mostly aerobic, just zone 2, some marathon, half marathon pace work. And then I will start to ramp up the volume, and then it will be very focused on that marathon, half marathon pace because that is what I'm training for. And then as Brian mentioned, hitting that peak in my training, that's when I kind of intersect that very event specific speed with some more VO2 max 5K work. So that's when the volume meets intensity, and that's when things can sometimes get a little dicey, but that's where the fitness really starts to peak. And then I start to go down in volume, keep the speed up, start reducing the marathon, half marathon workouts, keep the 5K work, but bring the volume down into the marathon. So that's generally how my blocks look like.
And during those crazy intersectional weeks, the legs must like you a lot.
The legs, winter blocks, the legs like me a heck of a lot more than summer blocks. Summer blocks I find super challenging with it being pretty hot and very humid here. It's the summer blocks, and one big thing for me in the summer is I'm a lot more lenient with the paces, where those blocks are those half marathon, marathon workouts are really key for dialing in that pace you want to run and get super, super comfortable with that pace, because at the end of the day, that is what you're training for. But in the summer, I do give myself some more leniency and will probably pull back about 10, 15 seconds from that pace on a lot of days just because of the heat. And then as the temperature starts to fall down, it really does come together. And I'm often surprised for that fall marathon where I think I'm further behind than I actually am.
Oh, just because of the heat.
I'm sorry, I'm more ahead of where I actually am. Sorry, reverse.
Yeah,
Free speed.
because during your block it's so hot and you feel like you're slower, but then you get your free speed when it gets colder out.
Exactly. Yeah. The nice thing about training very hard for those blocks, but then you have trained in hotter days than that race 100%. In reverse, winter training is amazing. It's so nice. Heart rate is so low, but your race day may be the hottest day you've trained on. So it's a give and take.
Ottawa race weekend, baby.
Yeah, that spring race can be quite the shock. So you tossed around a few buzzwords, and when we were preparing for this episode, we were looking at what are the kind of key workouts that you might see in any training plan. So we've got a few. Why don't we just toss it around the circle and we'll build through that list quick. So the first one, and it's not actually on here, and it's shout out to all of those beginners that we've been seeing hit the roads, grab their shoes, and get out the door and run. And that is the walk run. So the walk run is kind of that first step if you're not already somebody who is comfortable doing a long endurance run. The walk run is really there as a stepping stone to consistent running over a long period of time. And the reason you do that is so that you're not just peaking your heart rate constantly during kind of that couch to 5K or couch to 10K block. And what you're trying to do there is build that aerobic capacity without always kind of redlining your heart rate and just going out too fast. So it's meant to really ebb and flow that heart rate so that you do get to run, but you're always drawing that heart rate down as you rest more during those walks.
Yeah, and that's I always give those as tips for beginners that ask, hey, how do I get to running? You just walk run. It doesn't matter. Don't look at your pace like, you want to do a sub 35K. Don't look at that. You do walk runs. Charlie, shout out to Charlie with his ultras. He's a very seasoned runner, but he does a lot of ultras, and him and his training partners swear by 9 and 1. So they run for 9 minutes, walk for 1. Run for 9, walk for 1. So like that also is a tactic on very long efforts too. So it's very good for the fitness to keep the heart rate low and just low and slow.
Exactly. And the last thing on walk runs is what you're aiming to do is not always just go faster during the runs and keep that same ratio of run to walk. It's actually to continuously run more relative to the amount you're walking until you can comfortably run in zone 2 at a pace you're happy with.
Yeah, and then the next, and I would really say that this is the bread and butter of endurance training,
and my favorite.
All of our favorites, I think. I mean, if we didn't like doing this, then what are we doing? Is the endurance workouts, and that's really just building that aerobic capacity. And I would say, as I mentioned previously, these are where you are trying to run a good part of your workout at that goal pace that you're trying to train for. So if you're trying to run a marathon at 8-minute miles, what is the kilometer conversion to that, give or take? 4:45?
I think 8-minute miles. It's in the 5s.
Okay, let's say 5-minute kilometers. Doing a nice warm up, getting your muscles ready, getting your heart rate regulated, and then doing a nice portion, let's say 10 kilometers at that goal pace, and really getting your body comfortable at running at that pace, getting your breathing under control, getting your legs used to feeling what that feels to go at that pace. So this is really where you're going to improve and you're going to get comfortable so that on race day, it's not a shock running at that and when you're extending how long you're running for.
So next, we got the nice speed workouts. Speed, you got to get the need for speed. This is the ones, the nice track workouts, the up to, what would you say, a kilometer or a mile repeats, really works on your VO2 max and just elevates that heart rate to a level where you get that cycle of the heart rate elevation, and then you get a little rest, and then you do a few repetitions, and depends on like what part of your plan you're in at that point, but you like kind of to go from 400 meters all the way up to that mile, so that just bumps up your heart rate and gives you that extra capacity to push to those limits once needed.
Exactly, and that's really the highest intensity workouts that you'll fit into a plan. And with all of those tough workouts that both of you described, you then have recovery work. And most plans, whether you're cycling or running, you're going to have recovery workouts, which are at a slower pace, even like that lower end of zone two, sometimes even zone one. And what that's meant to do is be a way to continue to move your body, but it can help promote the muscle repair, reduce the risks of overtraining, and it can also help clear lactic acid from your muscles. So removing that lactate, flushing that out, which will reduce soreness and improve your subsequent workouts. So that is a really, really helpful tool, which is easy. Yes, it takes time, but it's a nice change to some of the tougher workouts that you'll have during any plan.
For those recovery workouts, shout out to the dog jog. I love a good dog jog to slow me down. So either running with friends, running with your dog, running with someone that is more new to running, I think are also great tips for, because I find especially as you get quicker and a bit more advanced in running, you try to take those recovery workouts a little too quick and know the goal of those is really to get the miles in, but ramping it right down to super, super easy is really what you want for those because you don't want to wear yourself down so you can smash those workouts. Um, but the next, and I think this is actually my favorite, is those dress rehearsal races or a tune-up race, which is really to simulate those race conditions to help us as athletes fine tune our pace, practice our nutrition and gear so that we can arrive on race day fully prepared. We have a plan that we've practiced because nothing new on race day. So we have this tune up to test everything. So we really just like practicing under those race conditions, and it can just really sharpen our mind, our body, just to get ready for whichever event you're preparing for. Yeah, and these can either be an event. You can sign up for an event. That's great. But also, for me, I know for half marathons, you just ask a friend, can you be support on a bike and go out on a local trail and do a half marathon or something. So there's lots of options here.
Yeah, and what I love about the tune-up race is because you're in the middle of a training block, your fitness is really, really high. Yeah, your legs are going to be tired, but I PR'd by a substantial amount in my tune-up race for the marathon block that I did. We did the Kingston Half Marathon, and I blew my PR out of the water because I had built so much fitness. It gave me so much confidence going into that marathon. Had I not done that, I don't think I would have been as successful in hitting my main target because it was just a confidence boost. It really, really tested my racing mind because it had been a while since I actually was in a running race.
Yeah, big thing is the mental too that you don't realize until you're in a race is like all these other things you got to check into other than just running on your own on a street or on a path any other day or even a paced workout. You don't have that same mental capacity as a race. Even the adrenaline of the crowd and the time going off, people around you, it's a whole different experience. So the tune up does really help. Andrew, when do you think you should be doing the tune up is my question.
Generally, I love doing three tune-ups. I love doing for a marathon, I like a half, a 10K, and a five. I would say the last one should be about 2 to 3 weeks before your main event. The order of them can vary for me because it really depends on like if there's an event I want to jump into, and if not, I can toss them around. But often I will do my 10K first, and I'll often that one's almost always a time trial for me. So that's probably 6 weeks out from my event. Another 2 weeks, I'll do a half marathon. And then 2 weeks before my event, I will do that speedy 5K just to get the legs moving.
Shout out to the BIM 5K. I think that's going to work perfectly for you, right?
It's almost like we timed it. We planned it or something.
I love it.
Yeah, that's glorious. So this last item here, Ty, the role of cross training and rest days.
Oh,
I
frig.
know I know rest days are a little bit tougher for you, but you are the king of cross training because of your triathlete background. Do you want to tell all of us a little bit about the beauty of cross training and why it's important in any plan?
I love the cross training, and I don't know. I don't know if it's just the fun of changing sports or activities, but it does help with the reduce the load off the legs, like just the general movement of running all the time. Sometimes it helps. Like instead of those, recovery days, you go for a bike ride instead or a swim. Swim is great, and then by the time you know it, you're a triathlete. But if you go out there, do some other exercises, it does keep your body moving, reduces the risk of injury. And I think I've been pretty lucky, knock on wood, with keeping the volume hours wise up, maybe not miles on the feet, but volume. I look at my volume hours based. So I keep my volume up close to the same amount as, let's say, a pure runner, but I get a little bit more of a break on the legs. So I find that beneficial for me and helps keep things moving along. And bonus, you get to train for a triathlon at the same time. So I kind of do that on purpose too. Like during my marathon block, I keep cycling and swimming, so then I could just go right into a triathlon block. And what we've spoken about before is that aerobic base, right? So I started that aerobic base for triathlon even during the marathon block, and kept rolling it through. So I found a lot of fun in that too.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And also like rest days are great. They help enhance your overall performance because you let that body recover even though it's a short window of recovery. It really does wonders in reducing your risk of getting injured. So adjusting your plan is also important because you can plan, but there's always something that gets thrown in, whether it is a little injury, whether it's a vacation away. You need to be flexible and you need to plan for life events and unexpected changes. One thing that I've always done is when I'm out on vacation, I'll try to hit those planned workouts, but I might increase the cross training a little bit, whether it's a walk around the city instead of a zone 2 recovery run or a hike up a mountain instead of some workout. I find that that is a really good way to carry a training plan through a vacation that might happen. What are some of the strategies you guys employ?
Generally, for me, as far as a lot of things you can kind of pre-plan. So if you have things, vacations or events that are going on, is kind of trying to work around and kind of swapping some workouts, or like Ty mentioned earlier, that putting some lower mileage weeks into your plan of like, I have this weekend event, so let's make this a down week so I can do a few workouts at the beginning, but I'm not trying to overload myself when I'm going away. So just trying to pre-plan that. But of course, unforeseen things happen like injuries. I think in the last block we all dealt with injuries and kind of had to adjust based on that. And I think that is when you really, on a day-to-day basis, you kind of look at some things need to give, whether that is your distance or your speed workouts, and just being flexible with that, especially if it's mid cycle where you've done a lot of the work already. Know that you're not just going to lose all of that fitness overnight, especially if you've been stacking block on block on block. So I'd rather arrive healthy than, in crutches where I can't even do the race. So I think being flexible is super important.
Step one is getting to that start line, baby. That's all that matters. Like I learned that the hard way. This last block is like, just like you were saying, like you think you're going to lose fitness if you miss a day or something. And like, just as simple as I was getting used to running during the day and no longer in the dark because it was getting spring. And I had on the schedule 10K easy pace. It was, I think, even sooner, maybe, what was it, 2 weeks before the marathon. And I said, oh, I'll go for my 10K. I forced it because it was later in the evening. and didn't see where I was going and rolled my ankle. And really, I could have just not went for that 10K, would have had a nice ankle, and I would have just lost 10K on my week. So it's not that big of a deal, and I would have kept some fitness.
Yeah, and I think the other thing with injuries is like, yeah, consult a medical professional, of course, if it's really impacting you and it's painful. Yeah. But also explore cross training because at the end of the day, fitness is interchangeable. If you can't run, but you feel totally comfortable on the bike or in the pool, you can explore those opportunities to still build some fitness, replace those miles of running with miles on the bike. That's what I ended up doing for 2 weeks after I severely injured my ankle. And I actually put in more time on the bike than I had planned on my feet running. And so I felt like I lost no fitness and actually potentially gained fitness, but I was able to fully recover over 2 weeks, not a single kilometer ran. And then I was ready to go 2 weeks later after that injury, and it was fantastic.
And you became an absolute freak on the bike too, so it's great.
It's a win-win. Yeah, so I think that puts things together pretty nicely as far as some great tips for building that training plan. You may have noticed that we didn't actually dig into specifics of training plans too much, and that's because none of us do this professionally, but there are great resources. I know personally, and this last block, we all use FitSinger Advanced Marathon training plans, and we love them. There are others, Hanson's, but I would say a great resource to use is this website, defy.org, DEFY.org, and it's called Calendar Hack. And that pulls a bunch of very popular training plans from couch to 5K to advanced marathoning training plans, and it puts it in a nice calendar format. So if you're looking for a tool to plan your next training block or for the BIM 5K potentially, I think you should head over to defi.org to get that on your calendar.
Shout out. But also, if you like Excel, you could get an Excel workout plan. It's really nice.
Yeah, and Tyler, like you've designed some Excel training plans that you really, really love and that are flexible to your life. Can you talk about your process a little bit?
Yeah, it's not just me putting random things together. I do consult the actual plans, but all I do is like tailor it to, like you said, my personal life. So if I know I'm going on a trip in 3 weeks, I'll put that in the calendar. I'll work my schedule around that, my training schedule. And I really like visual. So I see, okay, in 3 weeks, I have this. This is why I'm loading up more or less during these other weeks. I really like the 18 weeks out. So you have like your countdown. So every week is, you're counting down all the way down to your race week. So that's also like kind of a check-in to, hey, I'm 8 weeks out of 16, so I'm halfway there. Oh, this week is week 10. I know it's a rest week. So you could kind of more, I like just visualizing it, that process, instead of looking on my phone. Okay, today, what are we doing? Like something like that. I know some apps are kind of like that, but they're more visual as well, which helps just with the training overall, I think.
You've supported some friends building out their plans. What are some common questions and challenges that people have, and how do you overcome those?
A lot of it, at first I ask, their commitments. Like easily, some people say, I actually made a plan recently for a friend. She said, hey, I have soccer twice a week. Can you put these in the schedule? And, some people, they just, if you get a plan prescribed from a book or online, they kind of don't play around with those personal commitments week by week. So, hey, this week I have soccer on Monday instead of Wednesday. It's just simple things like that you could uh, work through their schedules, and you could kind of play with their loads that them personally to be at, like fitness wise. So like if those people are like couch to 5K, you're not going to give them a 10K run on week 2, so sometimes it's just as easy as, hey, after the gym, go on the treadmill for 10 minutes. Like I've done that too with one of my friends that just started running. He's big into the weights, and then I said, hey, after the gym, start with 10 minutes. Next week you do 20 minutes. And then the week after that, you start splitting them up. And I kind of explained the weekly mileage too. So it's easier to comprehend and easier to bite down, I think.
For sure. I love that. And I had to address that challenge too, trying to balance cycling and running as I gear towards potentially racing a criterium this fall, as well as running the BIM 5K. It is a game of balance and seeing what runs could be replaced with bikes and vice versa.
I mean, when you only do one sport, it's simple, is all I'm going to say.
The one trick pony, I'm telling you.
That's lovely. Okay, hot take of the week time. Tyler, we want to hear from you. What's been going on in the lower department of your body?
So I'm telling you, I'm still sweating from the experience. We wax the legs, folks. I'm telling you, we wax the legs. The hot take is green light on the getting rid of hair in the leg area. I'm saying getting rid of hair because that's another hot take. I think wax is the new way to go. We have to start waxing, boys.
Like waxing over shaving?
Oh, yeah. Waxing over shaving 100%. My legs are going to stay smooth as a baby's bottom for the next week and a half while your guys' are getting prickly already, let me tell you.
I have one challenge to this, which is I heard through the grapevine that you were hooting and hollering in pain because of the wax, whereas shaving or just using an electric trimmer never is painful.
Oh, let me tell you, no pain, no gain, baby. I was in absolute sheer agony, but it was worth every second of it.
My next question, speaking of time management, managing all those sports you do, how long did this activity take you?
1 hour per leg, a crisp hour per leg, one box per leg. It was very efficient.
You need to add those 2 hours into your training plan as just general volume.
Well, I tracked one leg on Strava. You could go check it out. I tracked it as a hit activity. We ended so late, I had to stop for the other leg because I didn't want to screw up my whole weekly volume with 2 legs of getting shaved. So it was, yeah, one leg. It was a nice hour, and it was quite the experience, let me tell you. But I heard also through experienced leg waxer herself, Juicy J, after you do it the first time, when it grows back slightly, it doesn't hurt as much. So we might do it again.
I love it. And so you competed in a triathlon today. What was the experience like? How did the new aerodynamic legs fare in that race?
Kingston Triathlon, baby. The legs were speedy. They were fast. It was a hot day, very fast out there, and it was just a great day. I don't know. Do you want me to go through a quick little recap?
I'd love to hear it.
Go sport by sport here. It was the day started out very hot already. Water temperature 22.7. That means optional wetsuit swim because the water was so warm. It was on the verge of actually not being legal, but because it was, it wasn't a, big crazy race. It was just a local race. They still told people they were allowed to wear a wetsuit optional, but I took the option and did not wear the wetsuit. So for just to go quickly into that, wetsuit, you get more buoyant, you float better, but it does restrict your range of motion on your shoulders. It does take a while to get on and get off. You do have a more elevated heart rate because you're just warmer in the water. So it's just like you're running out in a hot day compared to a nice winter build. It's just a bit more taxing on the heart. So we did a consensus with the boys, Charlie and John, and we said no wetsuit. So it went decent. I say I was pretty comfortable in the water. I was kind of slow because there wasn't a wetsuit. A little bit weedy, but we got it done. I'll pull it up here, the time, official time. I think I was 2 minutes 8 per 100 meters. So not that speedy, but we made up for it. So that's a 42:41 swim, 2K swim. So it was nice. And the moment, Brian, you were waiting for, transitions. And I know we spoke on it last pod, and I told you guys I was going to be around 4 minutes. I was hoping. The transition came in at T1 3:48, right under the 4 minute.
Let's go. Way to do it. Like 3:48 is a fantastic transition. I'm sure not having the wetsuit helped, but
Exactly.
That's fantastic, especially coming from a man who could have fit in an episode of The Simpsons at your last Iron Man transition.
Exactly. So I was very happy with that. And actually, I took a mental note. It took me 2 minutes to run from the water to my transition. So it was really like I was only a minute 48 in that hot seat getting onto my bike. So I think I fared pretty well with that transition time. And then you hop on the bike and you get to riding. My favorite part. It's the ride was actually pretty hilly. 55K. There was about I think I tracked 350 or 380 meters elevation, uh, about a 25-meter climb right at the beginning. So that really juiced up the legs. I rocket shipped up that hill, and then you got into a little groove. It took a couple K to get into a groove, but ended up doing pretty well on the ride. My favorite portion. Ended up with a official time of 136.52, which is just above 34 kilometers an hour average. So it was great. A lot of rollers, like I was saying, and it was a lot of time was spent in the aero bars, TT, just pushing the pace. I wish I had my power meter on there, but I got to put that on next week. And the last section, I kind of gauged with my heart rate is what I did. Is I did a perceived effort. I didn't go over 165 on average. Like I obviously the climbs you kind of push up into the 170s, but then you come back down into the 160s and 150s, and the last 10K kind of pushed pretty hard, tried to get my average just a little bit higher to get into the transition, a minute or so quicker, with transition 2 being 321. So another good transition for me. And
Big speed.
it was just get off the bike with my tippy toes, just run over to the bike. And actually I forgot where I racked my bike. So I ran too far, came back the other way, and then found my shoes. Another reason was because it was actually hilarious. John had his shoes, the Hokas that we wore for the half. So I locked eyes on those, and I ran to those shoes, and I realized I literally nothing new on race day. I bought new shoes on Friday, and I forgot what color my shoes were. So I ran right by the shoes that I was gonna wear, and I'm like, what's going on here? This is not my stuff. So that took a few seconds off my transition for sure. And I was
That
wearing the
is,
nice.
sorry, that is absolutely absurd that you forgot what color shoes you had for your race, so you couldn't find your transition spot.
I actually was so confused. I almost called like someone over, said like someone stole my stuff. Like I did it. I thought I was legit. Just someone left my shoes there. Someone grabbed all my stuff. So it was, folks, know what shoes you're wearing on a race. Let me just tell you that much.
But that's great. That's another good transition. How did the run feel?
Yeah, it was a good transition. I wore that outfit we posted with all the crew there with the Hawaiian shirts. We made a pact and we said we were going to run in those. So I slipped that on last minute like a cape. Had a lot of comments out on the run, which was great. You know me, I love chatting on the run. So I was just chatting up a storm with a few guys out there. So it was fun. But the run felt good too. It was, I had a little bit of pain in the quads, just juiced up from the bike, but nothing non-manageable. And I tried to stay at a 5-minute pace and like kind of push near the end to see what I had left in me. But I started out the first half just under the 5 minutes. So I was like 457, 458. Then a bit of, again, 100 meters of hills in the 15K. So the hills kind of got to me again as well. But I stayed within that 5 to 510 range. And then on the last 3 to 4K, I opened up a little more and ended up with a average of 457 official time with a 114.17. So I finished pretty decently. I really, that's where I wanted to be. So it was good with the final time of 340.59. So right under 341.
And good enough for an age group podium.
And let me tell you, age group podium, my favorite medal I've ever received so far. It's friggin' nice. Let me tell you, the bronze.
Oh, that's the bronze. That's
Yeah, that's
nice.
the bronze. I don't even have the other medal. I left it in the car. It doesn't matter. The finisher medal, don't care. I just care about the bronze medal, baby. It was funny. It was, Charlie was looking at her times and he looked at, just like it says, whatever out of whatever of your age group. And he looked at his, he was fifth out of the age group, and he looks at mine. He's like, you got podium. And then we looked over and they were doing the podium announcements. So I went and chilled in the corner, and then they called my name up and he took a video. It was pretty funny. And the funniest thing too is the two guys beside me, the second and first, they were first and second overall the whole race. So there was a about a 50-minute difference between me and the second place guy. Like that's how otherworldly they were in. But it was pretty funny watching me walk up there with the Hawaiian shirt and maybe weighed 25 pounds more than the other guy beside me, and he was like 6'4". So it was kind of funny.
Well, no, that's a phenomenal race, and we're proud to see it.
The
I'm
BIM
sure that
represent.
that's it, and I'm sure that gives you a good boost going into your Ironman for the mental game, but also just proving that all of your training is showing in your fitness.
Yeah, exactly. I actually think the biking is the area where I've seen the most improvement, and even before I was like decently strong on the bike, but I really was able to push hard for those 55K and seeing what the legs could do. So it was good. Yeah, it gives me a good boost for my next month or so, and then you get into the real stuff.
Love it. Love to see it. And Tyler, what did I notice about the podium, the age group podium? There was
Ah,
a common trend.
there's a common trend in the podiums. Let me tell you, they are hairless. The hairless leg is a common trend. Let me tell you, nobody made a comment. They would look at me, pass them. I'm passing them on the bike. They see the shaved legs. They say, wow, that guy is fast.
Oh man, all of this race talk is making me very, very excited for my next race.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm excited to be racing alongside you guys. And hopefully, Tyler, you and I might be in that sub 20 category for the Boys in Motion 5K coming up on October 5th.
Frig, I'm excited for that Boys in Motion 5K, but I'm going to let you get that sub 20 because my legs are going to be juiced. I think what is it, a week or two after my Ironman, it's going to be the legs are going to be pretty busted up, and I'm going to try my best.
Yeah, I think it's two. It's two after
Oh, we're good.
Ironman, and then another two until Waterfront. So you're fine.
I'm trying to PR both, so we'll see. I'm trying to PR all three: Ironman,
Yeah.
5K, and marathon. So we'll see how that goes.
That's going to be an epic 6 weeks of racing.
Oh yeah, I'm excited for the BIM 5K. It's going to be nice. So what are we going to do? We're going to get some more info out for the boys, and we're going to see what happens.
Stay tuned. We're getting information together. Just a quick overview is it's going to be in the Niagara region. We're going to do a staggered start 5K. So regardless of what time you'll be running, we'll have a big variety of paces already. So no matter what pace you want to run at or walk, you're more than welcome to come, and we'd love to see you there. But stay tuned on Instagram. We'll have full details coming out.
Bring everybody you want. Your mom, your grandma. You guys are all going to stop end at the same time.
That's it. I'm gonna, plow through somebody's grandma going full yard sale at the end of the race for
Just
free.
sprint finish. You're going to sprint finish yard sale. Go full lizard.
Sprint finished against an old man in a walker.
That's gonna be intense. I'm gonna like that.
Absolutely blackout in those last few hundred meters.
Don't even know where you're going. Just plow through.
Exactly. Well, what I'm really, really excited for about the BIM 5K is seeing all the people who are starting to run amongst our friends and through the grapevine, friends of friends. It seems like there's a real trend to people getting out there, people starting to kind of combine running with cycling just in preparation for the event. I've seen Sean, an old roommate of mine, and also Jansen, another roommate of mine from my university days. Both of them are starting to run, and I think it's geared at the BIM 5K.
And we got Michael Kend starting to get the runs in. He's gonna be dangerous, I think, guys.
Yeah, my big shout out for the BIM 5K this week is to Ian. We've done a couple bike rides together, but ever since the last BIM 5K, he told me that he wanted to join the next one. And just last week, I sent him the Couch to 5K training plan. And I said, you got a couple of weeks, but it's an 8 week block and you can start training. And just 2 days ago, he posted a run. It was just about 4 kilometers, so already getting into it. Basically, already ran 5K. So he's putting in that work.
Just round it up. He got the 5K, basically.
Exactly.
That's great. Some other names that are starting to run a little bit more. Chris is running, which is really cool. Also, Jacob and Mike are running. And then Kennedy as well. Shout out to Kennedy, who's been putting some miles in. She's got, I think, a 10K block that she's currently training for. But this
Ooh,
5K is going to be a nice tune-up for her 10K that she's got her sights on.
I'm excited. I'm excited. I don't know. We're the train is rolling and everybody's hopping on. Let's go.
Yeah, it's really, really exciting. It's great to see we're at the peak of summer and people are starting to hit the roads. I love it. Anyways, this episode was fantastic. We're going to wrap it up here. We went over everything you need to have a successful BIM 5K, which is finding a plan that's right for you, sticking with it, but being flexible to anything that arises. We're going to be looking for everybody who's listening on Strava, the Boys in Motion. We're getting after it all together, and we're excited to race alongside you.
Yeah, please do join the Boys in Motion Strava. We'll be giving you all those kudos as you train for the BIM 5K, and we're very excited to see you putting in that work.
You might even get a comment if you're lucky, baby.
We just want to remind you that we are definitely not medical professionals, and the advice and tips that we share with you are based on all of our experiences and research, and that before making any significant changes to your training plan, definitely consult a healthcare provider.
That's it. So if you're listening on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you listen to the podcast, check the show notes down below. You got the links to everything. Get involved in the community. Start running, start moving. You know we are. So, Boys in Motion, out.